Okay, everyone. Today we're going to go over a little bit here on your first, or go over two examples with your finding your net force worksheet number 2. So we're going to do one from each section. So we'll go over an example from a 1D vectors, and we'll also look at a 2D vector example. So when we're looking at vectors, we can look at dimensions where we're just adding and subtracting, but when we do 2 dimensions, we end up with having to follow our vector addition rules. So if I'm looking at the Fy, which is vertical, if I have 120 up, if anything I have going up, I put a positive number. If I have something going down, that ends up being a negative number. But if I have positive 120, negative 120, the sum of forces in my y dimension end up equaling 0 newtons. And if it is 0, I don't have to worry about direction. As I'm taking a look at the forces in my x dimension, left and right, which is horizontal, I get 96 to the right. That is my positive value. If I have a number that is going, or I have a force that's going left, that gets assigned a negative value. Then all it is adding and subtracting. I'm taking 96, I'm subtracting 25, because that vector is going in the other direction. And I am taking 96 minus 25, and that's going to give me my force in the x is 71 newtons to the right. If I ended up with a positive number, that means it's right. If I end up with a negative number, that means left. So my answer then is I get 71 newtons to the right, I get 0 newtons to the left. I want to make sure that I mark that in my form, and it looks like that is the very first answer. 0 newtons, x is 71, right, and y is 0. Make sure you select the correct one. Watch out for the signs and directions. If we come down to do an example from number 2, I want to go over to the next section. Doesn't look like I can preview it. But in the next section, if you happen to look at the top, I don't want any of that to be shown. Quit it. Determine the forces of the horizontal and the vertical directions. So we're going to find Fx, then we're going to find Xy. To determine the net force, create a right triangle using the 2 components. So F of x is our x value, the force in the y is our y number, and then we plug into the Pythagorean theorem and solve for the resultant, the r. So if we take a look here at number 7, so come down to number 7. So we got an airplane. Again, we'll look at our totals. We'll look at x, and we'll look at y. If I start out with my x first, I get this is my negative direction, this is my positive direction. So I'm going to take 14,700. I'm going to subtract 9,210. And that is going to give me 1,400 minus 9,210, 5,490 newtons. Right, because right was bigger. If I'm looking at my forces in my y direction, up is positive, down is negative. So I'm taking 24,700. I'm subtracting 55,600. 24700 minus 55600 is giving me negative 30,900 newtons. And what that negative sign is telling me is the fact that, hey, it's going down. Now, these are going to be the legs of my triangles that I'm plugging into x squared plus y squared equals r squared. If you want, you can type this just in a calculator like it is. I'm going to take 5,490 squared plus 30,900 squared is equal to r squared. I can include that negative sign here. All that negative sign is doing is telling me what direction, since it's in the y. A negative sign in the y means it's going down. If it's a positive number, that means it's going up. So I want to square those numbers, add them together. This step you can combine and just do all in one step. So I'm going to square that number. I want to add it to 30,900 squared equals. So 984, this is a big number, 950, was that 100? Yeah. And lastly, to get rid of a square, we take the square root. And I'm just going to take the square root of that number, and that's going to give me 31,384 newtons. Now, as I take a look at my direction, I got one going east, I have one going south. I combine those two, I'm going to have 3,384 newtons southeast. And in the Google form, 3,384, my correct choice is part C. Okay, so with two-dimensional vectors, find your f of x, find your f of y, and then plug into the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, good luck.